Join me in welcoming Chris to the podium.
Apology. Noun. 1. A regretful acknowledgement of an offense or failure. 2. A reasoned argument or writing in justification of something. It's my goal this afternoon to present an administrator's apology. As a genre of rhetoric or literature, an apology is a formal justification of one's beliefs and viewpoints, often couched in personal and autobiographical terms. As a justification, an apology seeks the audience's support and understanding, but not their forgiveness, as it is an assertion of positive worth rather than an admission of fault or failing. A couple of caveats before I begin. First, while I'll follow the conventions of the genre and talk about myself, this isn't about me. It's about us and about the work we all share. Of course, being a narcissistic president is a bit in vogue right now, so if I talk about myself, I hope you'll forgive me. And second, given the dual definition of the word, I will, and I've just learned this word the other day, I will equivocate. That is, I will occasionally use the word in both senses. I reserve the right to clear the slate and offer regretful acknowledgments of various offenses or failures in my career. The most famous apology is the oldest, Plato's Apology, in which Socrates defended himself against the charges of impiety. Given how that turned out, one might have thought that the genre didn't have much future, but it's persisted. Other works in the genre include Montaigne's Apologie de Raymond Sebond and John Henry Newman's Apologia pro vita sua. For my purposes, I wish to focus on the mathematician G.H. Hardy's A Mathematician's Apology. Hardy was one of the leading mathematicians of his generation, with a career spanning the first half of the 20th century. He and his colleague John Littlewood made fundamental contributions to number theory and analysis, and were mentors to the Indian self-taught mathematician prodigy Srinivasa Ramanujan. A Mathematician's Apology was written in 1940, when Hardy was 63. In it, Hardy addresses three themes. First, he asserts the value of pure or abstract mathematics over applied work. Second, he asserts that the highest calling and greatest legacy is to create new mathematics, preferably pure mathematics, as opposed to applying existing work, teaching mathematics, or engaging in exposition. Finally, he asserts that the creation of new mathematics is a young man's work and mourns that he has grown old. He has lost the creative powers that were the essence of his career, and quite possibly the essence of his self-definition. These are worth exploring for a moment. First, Hardy makes a distinction between pure or abstract mathematics on the one hand and applied mathematics on the other. Pure mathematics includes areas such as logic, abstract algebra, geometry, topology, analysis, number theory. Applied mathematics includes such areas as differential equations, numerical analysis, probability, financial mathematics. I don't think you need to be a practicing mathematician or even an active consumer of mathematics to have an intuitive feeling for the distinction. On the one hand, the Pythagorean theorem is an abstract statement about perfect geometric objects, right triangles. On the other hand, the gambling industry rests firmly and successfully on applied probability theory and the central limit theorem. Hardy gives primacy to pure mathematics for two reasons. First, he argues that pure mathematics is elegant, beautiful, poetic, if you will. In contrast, he sees applied mathematics as trivial, ugly, dull. He describes the prosiness of it and asserts, "We have concluded that the trivial mathematics is on the whole useful and that the real mathematics on the whole is not." In another passage he wrote, "The mathematician's patterns, like the painters or the poets, must be beautiful." The mathematician's pattern, like the painters or the poets, must be beautiful. The ideas, like the colors or the words, must fit together in a harmonious way. Beauty is the first test. There is no permanent place in the world for ugly mathematics. I must note that, as with some of the more esoteric areas of music and art, beauty in mathematics is an acquired taste. Virtually all mathematics looks ugly to the layperson. Second, he argues that by not lending itself to application, pure mathematics has not been used for ill. He wrote, "No one has yet discovered any warlike purpose to be served by the theory of numbers or relativity, and it seems unlikely that anyone will do so for many years." Written at the beginning of World War II, this may very well have been whistling in the graveyard. Number theory is the backbone of modern cryptography. Special relativity is key to GPS systems that enable cruise missiles and ICBMs. Hardy was an ardent pacifist, and he sought to disassociate himself from any sense that he might do harm, even at the price of disavowing having done good. A key phrase of his that I'll return to: "No discovery of mine has made or is likely to make, directly or indirectly, for good or ill, the least difference to the amenity of the world." Hardy's second thesis is that whether pure or applied, true commitment and true status comes from doing mathematics. All else is secondary. He wrote, "There is no scorn more profound, or on the whole more justifiable, than that of the man who make for the men who explain. Exposition, criticism, appreciation is the work of second-rate minds. The function of a mathematician is to do something, to prove new theorems, to add to mathematics, not to talk about what he or other mathematicians have done." In the language of Boyer's taxonomy, Hardy was firmly and unapologetically an advocate for the scholarship of discovery. He was not so sure about the scholarship of integration, and as for the scholarship of application and the scholarship of teaching and learning, he had all the condescending disdain that the British elite can muster. As Hardy made the case for pursuing mathematics, it was clear that part of his motivation was his legacy. Hardy did not believe in an afterlife and reached for immortality through his works. A person's first duty, a young person's at any rate, is to be ambitious, he wrote. Ambition is a noble passion which may legitimately take many forms. There is something noble in the ambitions of Attila or Napoleon, but the noblest ambition is leaving behind something of permanent value. He went on the whole, the history of science is fair, and this is particularly true in mathematics. No other subject has such clear-cut or unanimously accepted standards, and the men who are remembered are almost always the men who merit it. Mathematical fame, if you have the cash to pay for it, is one of the soundest and steadiest of investments. Archimedes will be remembered when Aeschylus is forgotten, because languages die and mathematical ideas do not. Immortality may be a silly word, but probably a mathematician has the best chance of whatever it may mean. I would like to pause and formally apologize on Hardy's behalf for the consistent assumption that only men engage in mathematics and science. From his view, first-rate minds do the discipline. From that flows the third and most deeply personal of Hardy's apology, his mournful acknowledgement that he had lost those creative powers that made him, in his own view and that of his peers, one of those first-rate minds. Hardy wrote, "It is a melancholy experience for a professional mathematician to find himself writing about mathematics." Hardy viewed this as the inevitable result of growing old. No mathematician should ever allow himself to forget that mathematics, more than any other art or science, is a young man's game. I do not know of an instance of a major mathematical advance initiated by a man past 50. If a man of mature age loses interest in and abandons mathematics, the loss is not likely to be very serious either for mathematics or for himself. And in another passage, a mathematician may still be competent enough at 60, but it is useless to expect him to have original ideas. The view that mathematics is a young person's game is widely held in the discipline. For example, in the Fields Medal, mathematics equivalent of the Nobel Prize, it is awarded to individuals under the age of 40. By the way, at the time of Hardy's writing, he was about my age. This last point of Hardy's is different than the others. Given the right combination of talent and opportunity, one might have the ability to choose whether to pursue the practical or the elegant. Given the right combination of talent and opportunity, one might have the ability to choose whether to pursue one's ambitions, perhaps at the cost to oneself and others, or to quietly flow through life. Given the right combination of talent and opportunity, one might have the ability to choose to be devoted to discovery and creation versus application and dissemination. One has much less choice about the waning of youth, and none at all about the finitude of our work and our existence, about the inevitability of the end. So these are Hardy's themes. 1, the abstract is better than the applied and is both more elegant and less harmful. 2, the first-rate mind focuses on creating their discipline and does so to leave a legacy. 3, the time available to create that legacy is fleeting and should be held on to firmly while it can be. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to apply Hardy's theses to our roles as academic administrators, in contrast to faculty roles. Let me restate them. 1, in contrast with the elegance, beauty, and perhaps moral superiority of the faculty, administration is prosaic, trivial, dull, ugly. 2, that the role of the first-rate intellectual is to practice the discipline, not to lead or support the work of the disciplines. That's the work of second-rate minds. And that the work of the administrator is not likely to leave a personal legacy. 3, if a first-rate mind chooses to become an administrator, it is a sign that their creative powers are waning and that they are no longer able to truly contribute to the doing of the discipline as they once did. I'd like to explore my own career and the role of an academic administrator in light of these theses. As I do so, let me begin by acknowledging that Hardy's worldview rests on a foundation of enormous privilege. Most people throughout history and throughout our world today do not have the luxury of deciding if they should pursue the elegant or the practical, if they should contribute to discovery versus application, if they are going to make their mark on history. I'm also very conscious that I am part of this privileged world. Yes, that's me. I had the good fortune to have parents who, though an accountant for the phone company and a housewife, were nonetheless alive to the world of the mind, raising us, their children, in an atmosphere of art, theater, history, culture. I had the good fortune to grow up never doubting that I would go to college and never worrying that my family might not be able to afford it. As an undergraduate, I had the good fortune to meet faculty who awoke in me the interest to pursue a research career and guided me towards graduate school. I had the good fortune, in a time that higher education was still looking back with longing at the golden era of the 1960s, to make connections in graduate school that led me to a research faculty appointment immediately upon graduation. I had the good fortune to have the combination of talent and opportunity that allowed me to choose my path. Initially, I chose Hardy's path, shared his worldview. It was deeply compelling, deeply satisfying. I can remember as early as middle school the fascination with the patterns that are the essence of mathematics, the allure as an undergraduate to dabble in research, the exhilaration as a graduate school of proving my first theorem and publishing my first paper. For my 10-year high school reunion, I filled out a questionnaire that, among other things, asked me what was the most exciting moment since high school. I was a conformist and said that it was watching the birth of my son. I lied. My most exciting moment was the birth of my first theorem. The realization that in some small way, I had added a piece to the puzzle. I had discovered a little part of nature's secrets. I would like to formally apologize to my son, Thomas. I love you, but. With all respect for my mentors, as an undergraduate, as a graduate student, as a new faculty member, there was little guidance to think of any pursuit other than that of mathematics research, little guidance to hold a different worldview than Hardy's. I had the privilege of being part of a noble enterprise, of working with incredibly talented people, of continuing to peel back little corners of the universe. I also had the privilege of seeing the world, traveling to research conferences or to collaborate with colleagues in Mexico, England, France, Germany, Italy, Brazil, Spain, Canada, Poland. A life that allowed me to spend a week in a Tuscan Renaissance cardinal's palace converted into a conference center is a life that one might well embrace and justify, and might well mourn when the inevitable passing of time brings its end in sight. So what went wrong? How did I, in the phrase we've all heard, go over to the dark side? And what did I find there? Let me address the last of Hardy's points first. I want to claim my role as an academic administrator, as an academic leader, as a choice. As I've noted, early in my career, I chose to embrace Hardy's vision as one who embraces doing mathematics and values the elegant over the practical. But it was in competition with another calling. At the same time that I was discovering mathematical patterns in middle school, I was one of the youngest Eagle Scouts and senior patrol leaders in my Boy Scout troop. At the same time that I was proving my first theorems in graduate school, I had the high honor to be the president of the Van Vleck Coffee Club and the heady responsibility of ensuring an ongoing coffee supply for over 250 faculty and graduate students, as well as leading occasional search and rescue missions to recover long-lost coffee mugs. As an assistant professor trying to get my feet under myself and build a career, I was organizing conferences and found myself taking over the leadership of a food pantry at the campus Newman Center. The point is, I always felt the call to make things work, to solve problems, and yes, to step in and run things in order to make that happen. In my late 30s and early 40s, when Hardy noted himself at the peak of his mathematical career, I was experiencing growing success and maturity in my research career. At the same time, I was becoming more involved in administrative roles including standing up a Preparing Future Faculty program in the graduate school, directing an interdisciplinary humanities center, serving as acting department chair of a department other than my own. Serving in those roles was incredibly attractive to me. I was making things work, solving problems, and yes, stepping in to run things in order to make that happen. When I was afforded the opportunity to serve as an associate dean, I perceived that I was at a crossroads in my career. I could focus on a career as a research mathematician, or I could focus on an administrative career. In contrast with Hardy's mournful transition, surrendering the role of an active researcher when forced to do so by waning powers, I made a conscious choice to pursue an administrative career. I've known leaders who have been successful in doing both, in maintaining an active research career while serving in leadership roles. They're really annoying. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant they're really admirable. But I didn't see myself able to do both well, and I made a choice to invest in my administrative roles. While I've never looked back, I will acknowledge that at least symbolically, I've kept the dream alive that one day I might return. I keep on my desk a folder with the paper that I had half written when I became an associate dean. It remains half written, and I accept that it may always be. I apologize to those in the mathematics community who are still waiting for on the homology of the integral manifolds of the spatial n-body problem to appear in their inbox. So, while it was a conscious choice for me, what do we make of the choice? Is administration a worthy calling for a first-rate mind? Is it a worthwhile endeavor in its own right, or is it a waste of talent and training to transition from faculty to administration while still capable of contributing to the discipline? Higher education is incredibly complex, and the ability to master that complexity is an accomplishment that we can be proud of. We face budget challenges, increasing regulation, public uncertainty of our value, student lives of ever-increasing complexity, accelerating changes driven by technology. We support students who are negotiating the transition to adult life, trying to find themselves while trying to find a path to success in life. We negotiate donors and alumni who often have high expectations for us and don't understand why we don't just give orders and make things happen. I might add that we are called on to meet all of these challenges while leading a workforce that is made up of the most independent, self-directed individuals on the planet. We don't just manage that complexity, we shape it towards a vision, towards the fulfillment of a mission. A mission, I might add, that includes keeping Hardy's vision alive for our faculty in the face of the hard realities of the world. Every day we make it work. That's no small accomplishment. That is not the work of second-class minds. As I make that claim, I'd like to hearken back to Hardy's regrettable sexism and contrast that with my own experience. It's probably not a coincidence that all of my early mentors who guided me towards a traditional mathematical career were men. It might be a coincidence, but almost all of the mentors who have guided and inspired me in leadership were women. I would like to pay tribute to my dean at University of Cincinnati, Karen Gould, my current president at Northern Illinois University, Lisa Freeman, CCAS's executive director, Anne-Marie McCartan, as well as CCAS colleagues who have inspired me, such as Denise Battles. They have meant much to me in my work. They have led me forward. But I can't possibly talk about women whose leadership have inspired me without mentioning my wife, Pam. Every day, her wisdom and her leadership make me better. And I apologize for all the times that somebody said to me, "That's a good idea." And I didn't say back to them, "Well, actually, it was my wife's idea." Is there elegance or beauty in administration? Is there any poetry in it, or is it all prose? That's one way to look at the question. The other is, have I as a dean, for good or ill, made a difference to the amenity of the world? First, I think we can all acknowledge that academic administration has its share of the trivial, the dull, or the ugly. But there can be moments of elegance, moments when we see a new idea or a new approach to a long-standing problem or a clever way to bring elements together. As one example, I used NIU's strategic planning process in 2007-2008 to create a low-risk process of surfacing faculty and staff initiatives called concept papers that generated over 100 suggestions. We subjected those suggestions to cluster analysis, and out of that surfaced, among others, a broad-based interest in environmental studies. I brought all of those parties together to form an interdisciplinary environmental studies program that offered one of the first interdisciplinary undergraduate degree programs in the university, cemented the status of the program by targeting joint hires to it, and led the development of policies necessary to sustain the program and the joint appointments. At least for me, a project like that, to discover a new idea or solve a problem in administration, brings much the same satisfaction as doing so in mathematics. While I respectfully disagree that elegance and practicality are mutually exclusive, I think the more substantive issue is the second one. Have we, for good or ill, made a difference in the amenity of the world? It's clear that as deans, it is part of our role to make a difference in the world. It is clear that as we do so, we have the opportunity to do good and the risk of doing ill. Have I ever done ill? Most assuredly I have. I've denied faculty tenure. I've fired staff. I've reorganized units to eliminate positions that I called redundant, but the individual called their job, their livelihood. In the name of academic quality, I've told students that their parents that they were failing a class, being sanctioned for plagiarism, or being dismissed from the university. I've cut budgets and withheld positions that caused academic programs to shrink, in some cases to be eliminated. I've cut graduate assistantships, travel budgets, operating budgets. I've been a bureaucrat who has upheld all manner of rules and regulations that, whatever else they may do, whatever reason may have been for them, have added inconvenience and friction to members of the university community. I don't apologize for those actions. However much we might look back on some imagined simpler time, today's world of higher education is a complex one. Disciplines rise and fall. Budgets shrink. Sometimes they grow. Regulation grows. Competition is real. Inequities in our society are real. Choices have to be made. When I signed up for the role of an administrator and leader, I signed up for the obligation to be among those who dealt with those issues, among those who made those choices, and so among those who must accept the responsibility. On the whole, I don't apologize for the choices I've made. I've deflected donors who asked for special favors. I've defended faculty whose work was controversial. I've used data and transparent processes to make hiring and program decisions, rather than relying on anecdote or backroom negotiations. I've respected the rules that were in place while seeking to change them when I felt they were wrong. I've tried to treat faculty, staff, and students with humanity and respect whenever I've had to sanction them. On the whole, I don't apologize for the choices I've made. However, I do apologize for the times when I fought shy, when I didn't make a tough decision. I do apologize for the times when I was in a hurry and failed to hear all sides of a story or forgot to listen. In that vein, Leslie, I apologize for that time when you were pushing hard for me to listen to your concerns about a problem. You were trying to warn me, and I got impatient and snapped at you. I've always felt bad about that. I apologize. If we've put ourselves in the position of risking doing ill, are we managing to do good? Are we making a difference to the amenity of the world? As we do so, are we able in some measure to enable and support those who, like Hardy, would pursue the life of the mind for its own sake? One of the great challenges and rewards of what we do as deans is that we do both, often at the same time. I'd like to mention a few examples to illustrate some of the different ways that we as deans make a difference. I've given voice. I've given voice in moments of crisis. In the aftermath of the February 14th, 2008 shooting on the NIU campus that killed 5 students and wounded 18, I consoled the college community. In the face of hate speech sparked by the 2016 presidential election, I spoke out to affirm our values of dignity and inclusivity. That might seem small, but in both moments, I was told over and over again how much it mattered when leaders spoke out or were silent, whether they understood the concerns of the community or failed to do so. I've also given voice to distill and focus our values and mission. It may shock those outside of higher education to hear me say this, but in their own way, faculty are deeply conservative. It takes slow, steady, patient advocacy to change academic attitudes. I've shaped the trajectory of the college and the university by consistently, year after year, articulating the importance of interdisciplinary programs, of student engagement and community engagement, of diversity and inclusion, of the power of bringing research, engagement, and education together to change students' lives. So don't let anyone tell you that words as leaders don't matter. Words matter, but of course so does action. A particularly satisfying effort has been to bring together our interdisciplinary program in Southeast Asian Studies and our interdisciplinary program in Environmental Studies, to bring water quality training to communities in Myanmar and Cambodia, communities whose passion to protect their environment was deeply humbling. I've raised scholarship dollars that have provided completion awards, enabling students who thought their dream of a degree was going to elude them at the last minute to find that last resource needed to complete their degree. I'm particularly proud of the scholarships for undocumented students, dreamers who are overcoming incredible odds to make better lives for themselves and their families. I've elevated and prioritized undergraduate research, raising awareness, generating donor funds, working with the college faculty to embed faculty participation engagement into the college promotion and tenure. So what's the legacy for doing so? Would I have been better remembered if I had remained in a research career? I share Hardy's doubt about personal immortality, and I suspect that Hardy might well be right. It is likely that if I had chosen a path, it is likely that I have chosen a path that will leave no personal legacy. Students whose lives are being changed will remember the professor who mentored them, the graduate student who showed them the ropes in the lab, the advisor who helped them graduate on time, the secretary who showed them kindness. Those students may be changed by actions that I took or that I motivated and enabled others to take, but they'll never know that I existed, much less know my role or remember my name. But that's okay. Let me tell you a story to conclude. For the past year and a half, I've served as acting provost, which includes the privilege of serving as master of ceremonies at commencement. I need to explain that at NIU, commencement's a university-level ceremony, but it's broken up by colleges for capacity reasons. At this last spring ceremony for the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, the college I had led as dean for a decade, there was a moment where I recognized the different forms of student engagement. I asked all the students who had been leaders in a student organization to stand. I asked all the students who had participated in service learning to stand. When I asked the students who had participated in research or study abroad to stand, 2/3 of the graduating class stood up. I could look across that crowd of bright, engaged, changed individuals standing there and know that, if you will, I had helped them to get them on their feet. That's not immortality. It might not be the sign of a first-class mind, but it was deeply satisfying. I hope that each of you, in your roles as academic leaders, have found or will find that moment of satisfaction that you have, for good, made a difference to the amenity of the world. Thank you.